Hey, before we start the episode, this is just a reminder this episode does take place before we had changed to a strictly interview format, and as such, there may be references to the other episodes we used to do that don't have anything to do with that. You can disregard that and just enjoy the episode.
The Graphic Histories Podcast.
Strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hey, welcome back to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is André, and I am still your host for the time being. Big thanks to Ukla the Mock for our theme song, Superpowers. Still love hearing that intro every time I tune in, and I hope you do too. They're a fantastic band. Look them up. Alrighty, so how are you? How is the quarantining going? Are you getting back to some semblance of normal as things kind of open up? Where I live in Nova Scotia, the Atlantic Canadian provinces have sort of opened, they're calling it an Atlantic bubble, in which people from New Brunswick, Newfoundland, PEI, and Nova Scotia can all visit each other's provinces without any issues. I mean, a few minor hoops you have to jump through to get across the border, but you don't need to self-quarantine when you go, and you don't need to self-quarantine when you come back. It's very exciting. A lot of people are having kind of cabin fever, unable to travel during this time. This is giving people sort of an outlet to get away for a little while, which is pretty cool. Me and the wife are planning on heading out there possibly in the end of July to do a little getaway. Our anniversary is coming up, so it'll be a fun thing to do. Hopefully you're out there getting to do some fun, get back to some life, see some friends, some family, some loved ones you haven't been able to visit with. And I'm hoping you're getting to take advantage of that. If you're in my area, and if you're not, if you're in the States or in other countries that are having a worser time, containing the virus, then I hope that things get better for you, and I hope you'll be able to kind of enjoy some of the freedoms that we are starting to be able to enjoy. If you're in the States, God help you. You have a long way to go, and I don't blame you. I just blame your clown president. Hey, and if that makes me lose a few listeners, that's fine. Go away. However, I don't want to politicize this sort of stuff and make big issues. I just feel, as this podcast is a part of me a little bit, I feel like I would do myself a disservice if I didn't get my own little opinions out there every once in a while. But I hope things are well. In the comic book world, things are opening up a little bit. One of the biggest stories of this past week is that Aliens and Predator franchises, their comic books, which have been historically done by Dark Horse for a very long time, are now being done by Marvel Comics. Marvel has negotiated a contract to get those properties brought under their umbrella, which is interesting in that, the Predator, I'm not sure if who under Predator is. I know for sure Aliens under Fox, which is owned by Disney, which, and Marvel is also owned by Disney now. So it's interesting that they're kind of combining a lot of those things under one roof. So it's very cool to see that happening and to see what they're going to do with it. In the past, they've had done a lot of Batman versus Predator. There's 3 miniseries of that. Superman versus Aliens, there are a couple of those. There's been multiple kind of crossovers between the franchises and the DC universe, so they never really done it with Marvel, because I'm guessing Dark Horse didn't have as good a relationship with Marvel as they did with DC. So it'll be interesting to see if they're going to start opening up that floodgate, and we're going to start seeing the Avengers versus Aliens versus Predator versus whomever, which, they're always kind of fun books when they do those. I mean, they're never really in continuity, but it's always kind of a fun read, and you get to see, the heroes you know and love interact with enemies that they're never really, tussled with before. So it's a very cool, interesting thing. So I'm very happy to see that and to see where they go with it. As far as other things in the comic book world, Comics seem to be rolling along back to normal. Mostly DC has come under a bit of flack for changing the distributor. They're no longer distributing their comics through Diamond, which has kind of thrown the industry through a loop. But hopefully it'll get settled and we'll all get our comics as normal and happily visit your local comic shop, which I wholly support. Please, please go to your local comic shop. Buy your comics there. Get your graphic novels there. Support the local people that are supporting comics, that are promoting literacy, and that are trying to, start something in your neighborhood. Unfortunately, in the area I live in, we don't have a comic store, so I have to drive about an hour away to get to the one that I frequent. It is known as Strange Adventures in Halifax. So I'll be going there this weekend, and I'm very excited to pick up my comics and get that sweet, sweet comic book store feel. So I'm looking forward to getting that as well. My guest today, as we are on an interview episode of the Graphic Histories podcast, I'm a very big fan of these episodes, and it makes me very happy when I get to do one. This time I'm speaking with Brenda Hickey, also known as Brenda Little, her pen name being Brenda Hickey, which is her maiden name, for lack of a better term. I always find that term kind of, doesn't seem right. Maiden name seems kind of like, doesn't seem right to me. So anyway, Brenda Hickey is my guest today. Very excited. Very glad I'm going to be able to get this out on time, because right after we finished the interview, as the program was compiling the interview, converting it into a format that I could use to edit and put into my software, the computer just shut down. So I restarted it, tried it again, same thing. Tried it multiple times, kept happening. Basically, the computer was overheating and wouldn't allow me to convert the episode. So first I was terrified that I lost the audio. However, it was still there. It just wouldn't allow me to convert it. So I got the computer in the shop yesterday. He had to keep it overnight. He got it back to me today. It seems like everything's good. And it seems, folks, that the culprit would be a massive amount of cat hair. I have 4 cats in my house. I keep rescuing them, and I can't find homes for them, so they just live here. They do like to, a couple of them do like to sit on my tower to look out the window. I always try to shoo them off, but apparently they're sneaking up to it when I'm not around. And perhaps it caused my overheating problem, which seems to be fixed at the moment. So I'm very excited that the audio was saved, it was converted, it's all good, and now I get to bring it to you. So without further ado, hope you enjoy listening to my interview with My Little Pony artist and writer, indie comic writer of Halls of the Turnip King, and artist Brenda Hickey.
Okay, but keep your clothes on. Might as well keep it decent.
I mean, if you don't want to, it's all
You
fine.
can't tell me what to do.
Right, you can't hear André because I got the.
No, I can't.
Because yeah, he said you can come and go as you want because it's just an audio podcast. But I said keep your clothes on though.
You can tell him I said clothes are optional for him.
André doesn't care, but
You do the thing, you have fun, play nice,
yeah, we'll play nice.
smash a chair over him.
All right.
Troy and his one joke.
It's a good joke. It's definitely a good. It's a winner every time.
Have you been?
Good, and yourself?
Things are good. I saw a pic of you on the beach.
Yeah, I literally I was gonna come home and shower and change, and then I didn't have time, so I literally just bombed in, cooked something to eat real quick, and then got on. So I apologize for my beachy appearance.
Oh, that's all right.
How was your Canada Day? You guys celebrate?
Yeah, pretty low key. There's not really a lot going on except the neighbors are from this really old band called Phase 2 that does all the island's favorite cover songs. And
Oh,
so we've
sweet.
been listening to that over across the way.
Oh, they're right beside you.
They're just down the street a bit on the other side, so 2 houses down and across. But,
Oh, that's pretty cool. Free concert.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few of them going on around town here, but nothing to I was a barbecue place I was going to get food at, and I stopped in, and the line was out the door because they had a band playing and stuff. So I was like,
Right.
eat out of some Tupperware.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the beach, it was good beach day.
Good. Yeah.
PEI, of course, has some beautiful beaches. I'm sure you guys are getting out much, or
Yeah, we've been out a couple times.
Yeah.
So yeah.
are you
I've
like
even-
me? Do you feel guilty if you don't make it out to the beach a certain amount of times in the summer?
Yeah. Whenever I first moved out of my parents' place, from my 20s to my 30s, it just seemed like the summers would always go by and I wouldn't make time for the beach. But and then I found myself, I'm like, oh, I don't like summer. I don't seem to like summer. It's too hot and I get cranky. And then I realized, well, that's because I'm not taking myself to the beach. now it's so much more enjoyable when I remember to get my butt over there.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You. I like to stick out the little sand umbrella and just sit under it at the beach and read. Good way to catch up on reading. So, but no, I think I counted the amount of times I've been to the beach last year. It was like 5. Like it was a depressingly low number. So I've already hit 3 this year already. So I'm doing.
All right, perfect.
All right, it's coming. Pretty much any free time I got, I'm just going to go now at this point. So
yeah, and we've had a pretty good June. So like a lot of warm days, warm sunny days to get there. And I even jumped in the ocean once, one of our trips already. Troy's like, "How can you do that? It's so cold." I'm like, "I don't care. I'm swimming."
I've gone in every time so far. I feel bad. It's almost like I feel guilty if I go to the beach and I don't get in the water. It's like I like water a lot and I like doing the beach. So
yeah, good. Then we're on the same page. And Troy's like, "If it's cold, I'm not going in."
What a wuss.
So I'm just splashing around with the 6-year-old. He'll play with me.
Of course he will. How's he doing?
Yeah. He's doing good. He lost his first 2 teeth the other day.
Oh.
Yeah, he got one day and then the next day. So it was like one after the other. But it was really funny because he had the 2 loose teeth for a while and he was kind of nervous of them. And then one day, one of them just started bleeding on one side. So we're like, okay, it must be getting close to time. And he wasn't eating. He wasn't eating until he like got so hungry that he had a chicken burger for supper. And when he was done the chicken burger, the tooth was gone. So we're like, dude, you ate your tooth.
Oh, no.
But he took it well. So he's like,
That's
the tooth fairy will still come. And of course she did. And then the next day he was going to show his friend in the neighborhood that his tooth came out. And I guess this kid he's a little rougher. So he like was grabbing at his face and Nathan's like, "I didn't like it. He was grabbing at my face and all this. He wanted to take my other tooth out." And I was like, "It's your tooth is gone. He must have succeeded." So, yeah. So
see, that's why I feel like maybe I'm too snarky to be a parent. Like, I feel like I would be like, "Oh no, it's in your stomach. Oh, the tooth fairy's gonna have to cut her way in to get it out." Maybe I don't have the right mentality for it. I don't know. Yeah. I feel like comedy sometimes comes further ahead than other things that might be more important.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a pretty good sense of humor.
Yeah. So. Well, with his parents, I'd imagine you guys are both really funny. So I'd imagine you picked up a thing or two from you guys.
Yeah, and definitely having teen older sisters.
Right. How old are how old are the twins now?
They're 13 and they'll be 14 in August. So.
What a fun age that's got to be.
Yeah, it's better than 12 and 11.
Oh, really? I
I
feel like 13 seemed to be the precipice of when you start being a real like jerk to your parents.
No, they were early. So at least they got it over with early, which is good.
As their essentially as their stepmom, do you get more flack because of that? Are they like worse to you, or is it just?
No, they actually complain about their other house more because they're more strict over there.
Oh, because you're the fun mom.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's a good thing to do.
Yeah. So I'm kind of like, because they've got 3 moms at this point, so I'm kind of like, I'll be just like the hands-off fun mom. Like they don't need 3 women nagging at them all the time. So,
oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I can understand that. It's nice to have sort of the fun, cool downplay. You come to me with your problems, mom, and not the one that's stern and keeps you in line.
Yeah.
So where did all this begin for you? Did you grow up in PEI?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was.
Go ahead. Yep.
I grew up by Brackley Beach, actually, this little strip of road called Harrington. So it's like the Brackley Point Road, and then there's just this one little area that's Harrington for some reason. That's where I was.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
And what'd your folks do?
My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and my dad was a custodian at Colonel Gray High for a lot of years. He's retired now.
Okay. So is that like the high school or the grade school?
The high school, yeah.
Was he there when you were going to that school?
I didn't go to that school, actually. That was where the city kids went. I went to a place called Charlottetown Rural, where the rural kids went. So,
was there any kind of a rivalry between the rural kids and the city kids, as it was?
Yeah, if you cared about sports, but I'm just like, geez, guys, come on. It's just sports. But,
That sounds about right. The school I went to was sort of the same. Like I grew up just
Mhm.
outside of Antigonish, and I know Antigonish
Mhm.
is a small town in Nova Scotia, but for some
Mhm.
reason that was like the town. So, do
Mhm.
you guys have names for each other? Like, do you guys have derogatory names?
No, I don't. I don't think so. I don't think so. Not that I was aware of.
Yeah.
There might have been, but I
We
have no idea.
we went to the East Antigonish Academy, and well, it was just a school with a really fancy sounding name, but it wasn't like
Mhm.
a private school or anything. But anyway, we were the Grease from the East. That's the
Oh
Antigonish people
yeah.
would call us.
Oh yeah.
We call them like preppies or soupies or
Mm,
something equally as stupid. But
yeah.
I always find that sort of rivalry between like schools ridiculous and hilarious,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
since we're all in like rural Atlantic Canada, so it's not like anybody has any big leg up over anybody else.
I know, right?
So was comics always a part of your life, or is that something you got into young? Or
Oh yeah. I was making comics since third grade. Yeah, colored with Crayola crayons, and they were just Sailor Moon ripoffs back then.
uh
Or like ripoffs of Archie comics, but with my own characters. Like whatever I could rip off, basically, when I was a child, whatever I was watching on TV or whatever I liked reading, I made a bootleg comic of it with my Crayola crayons.
now, was it like you would just sort of mirror the because this kind of reminds me what I used to do when I was a kid as well? Would you just like mirror the panels and then put in different dialogue, or is it just like the characters and the sort of story itself?
Yeah, we would. Well, in the beginning, we would just like remember what happened in our shows, and we just write it, like draw it down. But when we started getting our comics, like when we would first get our Sailor Moon comics, we would actually copy the pictures, but change the hair and stuff, and
Okay.
change the names. So,
And
and
is
then
we a sibling or?
yes, my sisters and I, my sisters, Carolyn and Susan, we did all that together. So
Oh, that's
I always
fantastic.
pluralize it. I'm like, all right, people don't all know that we were like the comics gang sisters.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so we had a lot of fun with that. So we'd each have our own comic that we do, and then we do a few pages of them and then exchange them, saying, I got new parts for you to read. And then we just kind of exchange them. And
That must have been really
yeah.
cool to have that sort of a sounding board, because like as a kid I didn't really
Mhm.
have that, like my parents I guess, but or my mom specifically. But I
Mhm.
feel like, like any kid, they're probably just humoring you, but it's neat to have other kids your own age
Mhm.
that you would get to sort of bounce those ideas off of and sort of build each other up, hopefully.
Oh yeah, yeah. We had a good time. We were always laughing at them.
It's
So
been fantastic. So beyond that, just was that always the end game for you to get into comics growing up?
yeah, I know early on I said I wanted to, but I don't know how serious I was about it until I got to college, like college age, and then thinking about post-secondary. I'm like, I still want to do comics. And so I took a graphic design course just here in Charlottetown, and it was a 2-year program, and I got that. And I'm like, that way I could get like a real job and do comics on the side, until I decided I don't like this real job and I just want to do comics full time. So yeah, so I took the plunge.
Was that what happened? You got a regular graphic design job?
Well, first, the timing was really good because there was a little animation studio opening up in Charlottetown called Trapeze Animations. So I was hired on layouts practically straight out of college. And that's actually where I met Troy. He was in layouts as well.
Yeah.
So
For our
yeah, it was,
listeners, Troy's your husband.
yeah.
Yes,
Troy
okay.
Little also does comics. Yeah.
Yes, he does.
So
And he's going to be tapped sometime in the future, so give him a warning.
yes, I will.
Excellent.
So yeah, so of course we got talking about comics. That's what kind of hit it off with us, is our connection to comics. And anyway, once that kind of dried up, because those kind of things don't often last in the Maritimes. So when our contracts were up and there was no more jobs, I was like, well, there's this graphic design place, I could apply to that to make some money. But I just didn't really like it. Like, it wasn't specifically just the graphic design. I think the people that own that specific company, I didn't care for them. So it really, really put me in a sour mood for that kind of a job. And that was around the time when My Little Pony was kind of becoming on my periphery. And I'm like, this looks like one that would suit me with my whole anime background. So especially Sailor Moon and liking all the magical girl stuff. I'm like, this is definitely my thing. So I took a shot for that while Troy was taking a shot for Powerpuff Girls, and we both landed the jobs. So it was a very girl powerhouse there for a while we were working on those two.
Was it like an open submission? Where did you see the opportunity for the My Little Pony comic come from?
I saw it come online that they had announced it. And so I was instantly curious because I had seen the Friendship is Magic style come up around the internet. And I really liked it. I thought it was really appealing. And Troy was also coming off a job too with storyboards for kids shows. And he's like, I don't really care for storyboards and I want to do comics too. So he had Angora Napkin, his creator-owned book, and his creator-owned book, Chiaroscuro, already published with IDW. So he thought, since I have an in with them, might as well ask if there's anything I'm suited for. And it just so happened they had all those Cartoon Network properties coming in at that time. So he was told then. So before it was announced or anything, they were like, we have this coming in. And then I kind of snuck in there being like, Troy, mention me with My Little Pony because I'm working on the pitch to get the job. And so the editor said it was cool if I just shot off a little portfolio for it. And so I kind of like snuck my way in there. I'm like, look at my ponies.
That's fantastic. Was My Little Pony part of your childhood, or is that something you enjoyed growing up as well? Like, I want to go back actually after this question to something else. But so was that something you were into?
Not so much because like I come from a big family. So two of my sisters I did comics with, but my oldest sister, she was kind of on her own and did her own thing. And she liked to have things that were her own. And My Little Pony was hers. And so I'd look longingly at the ponies on her shelf sometimes, wishing I could play with them because they looked cool. And there's some photos of me as a child where I've got a pony. So I'm like, sometimes I must have succeeded in that. But generally I wasn't allowed to touch her ponies. So, and yeah, she was very protective. She didn't even like us to have our own ponies. So we just knew not to ask for it for Christmas or birthdays. So
I feel like the interrelationships between sisters is like one of those unlockable things for men to try to figure out. Because I've never had a sister. I have an older brother. And my wife has a sister, and I guess essentially I do now, sister-in-law or whatever. Yeah. But in that way that like women, like boys always seem really, I don't know what the word would be, like antagonistic and I want to say like violent in that we're just beating the crap for each other, but like always needling at each other or poking each other, or doing stupid stuff like that. And women seem to play like this, or girls specifically play like this psychological game, like that whole like you can't touch my ponies. I don't even want you to be into My Little Ponies. It's like power struggle thing. That seems like something that like adults would do, but like girls lock into that early and like can cause damage, I find. Yeah. Not to generalize genders, but it just seems like that is sort of a definitely an overarching sort of thing sometimes that I hear when I hear the stories of people and their sisters.
Yeah, I mean the other two sisters I had were just like, let's share everything. So we were cool like that. But
very cool. So to go back to the anime thing, so was anime like the thing for you when starting out? Like that, like what got you into anime?
Sailor Moon, of course, was. I didn't know
the animated show, and then on to the other?
Yeah. I didn't know anything about anime. I didn't know it was from Japan. I had no idea. I just was like, I like this show. So I just would watch it. Like at first, of course, all the kids at school were making fun of it. So I was like, I think Sailor Moon's lame. It looks stupid. And then I turned the TV on one day and it was like the episode where Sailor Jupiter is doing the ice skating. And I was like, I love this actually. I won't tell anybody at school, but then I told everybody at school. I couldn't keep it quiet. It's like, hey, it's the best thing ever. And then Sailor Moon led to like Pokemon came on TV and I started kind of realizing there were similarities between the art styles and like all the Japanese stuff. So I was like, okay. And then that led into just kind of generally knowing about anime. So, and manga as well with like mixing, like I said, with the Sailor Moon comics, they would have Magic Knight Rayearth by Clamp, who did Card Captor, and just kind of like, it was a downward spiral. I always say like manga's like crack for adolescent girls. It was definitely my crack.
I can see that, especially at conventions. It seems like there are an awful lot of young girls that are into the manga anime scene. Yeah. And like a lot of adult women as well that grew up with it like yourself and really fell in love with it and kind of carried it on. Yeah. Manga and anime, like I watched Dragon Ball Z growing up, which is like the guys, is the anime option. Yeah. And I did watch Pokemon, but that was something I kind of kept quiet because it certainly wasn't cool to watch in school. In my school specifically, at my age, which was probably like, I don't know, 11 or 12.
Mm.
So I had a cousin that would watch it as well, and he would record it for me because I didn't have cable growing up. So, but those were the sort of the it's so deep. It's such a deep well now. Like if you just want to get into manga or anime, there's so much. It's almost daunting. And like to get suggestions, it's like, well, what series do I read? And someone's like, well, this one, but there's like 48 volumes in the first part, like 90 more in the second part, and then there's the sequel series and the prequel series. It's kind of a daunting thing, but it's such a vast, and it's, I mean, it harkens really to an art style, not so much a story style. That, you know, there's sort of stories for everything, sort of. In that. Like I did read parts of Death Note, which I want to get back to finishing.
Yeah, Death Note's a good one because it's, I don't know, I find a lot of the ones that do get translated in North America tend to be kind of similar to one another, but Death Note really stands out for having like a really solid story and doesn't quite fall into those anime tropes. Like it's got some, but not quite the same as some of them, which can be quite similar to one another. But you go ahead. Oh, sorry.
No.
Yeah, but the vast amounts of volumes is kind of how I fell out of manga now and anime, and I just almost don't know where to pick up from here. You go out of it and you're like, I don't know. I have no clue.
Every once in a while I'll come across something that looks interesting and I'll pick it up. Like there was like an adaptation of Frankenstein that looks pretty interesting. I can't remember the name of the fellow that did that one. But then there's like a zombie one, like something Hero. I can't remember what it's called.
Okay.
I Am the Hero or something, I think it was called.
Okay.
So I kind of came across those. But one thing that I did get into, mainly through the films, and also that Frank Miller was really into them and doing the covers, were the Lone Wolf and Cub.
Oh, right. I remember those at the library.
Yeah. And they reprinted them recently, but there's like 15 omnibuses like that are like super thick of the entire run.
Yeah.
And then there's like a sequel series, and then there was sort of a spin-off series, and it's I tried tracking down all the volumes and I finally got them all, but it's a lot, even just for shelf space.
Yeah.
That and the Astro Boy, the original Astro Boys. That was I guess, I suppose, as far as anime goes, that was probably my first introduction.
Yeah, I watched a bit of that, but I hardly remembered. I was so little.
Yeah, it was one of those things. I think it came on at like 6 a.m., so I would purposely get up as a kid just to watch it before I could go to school. It was such I guess like a big part of my initial childhood, because it was a really fun story and fairly dark for like a kid's cartoon. Like it's some pretty dark themes within those shows, and I always find it in anime sometimes. Yeah,
totally. Like I remember it blowing my mind when I found out like the uncensored Sailor Moon, and how like the first story arc where they're facing their first boss character, Queen Beryl or whatever. It's like all the scouts die except Sailor Moon. And in the English, they're like, they got kidnapped.
Really?
Yeah. They're like, they got kidnapped by the Negaverse. Oh no, we got to rescue. But the Japanese, they were just dead, and they were transparent because they were spirits. So,
oh, fantastic. Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, they died quite often in Sailor Moon and would always get reborn all the time, or like reincarnated. All
Same
the
as
time.
Dragon Ball, they would kill them off constantly and just find ways to bring them back. Usually using the Dragon Balls. Yeah. But I found that too, because like there's all like anime and manga always is kind of deceptive in that you'll watch these things and they seem like they're for kids because they're animated, and I guess for the most part they are. But in the culture, they put in all these things that they take out for the Americanized versions. Like, there's a lot of overly sexualized things I find in some of them that always get taken out, that I just find so mind-bendingly strange that they're like, in Japan, this is just part of children's entertainment.
Yeah, I know.
And maybe it's that the West has a lot of hang-ups on sex stuff, and maybe with the with the Japanese culture, it's not such an issue. But it always just seems, some of it's pretty overt and pretty disturbing.
Yeah, it's funny because when the twins, my stepdaughters, they were getting into anime when they were a bit younger. They're kind of on the out with it. They like a few still, but it was really hard to navigate because I'm not sure anymore what the shows are, and you can never tell what the content is going to be, and you have to do a lot of research, and sometimes you're like, I'm not sure. Like, it was a hard thing to navigate. I found, like, as a parent trying to go through it, whereas when I was a kid and I'd see something naughty, I'd just be like, don't, my mom doesn't see that. But I wasn't too traumatized. I was just like more scared that my mom would find out. Yeah,
That's usually the way, and sometimes that's the gateway into learning stuff that your parents, probably don't want to talk to you about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So so My Little Pony, did you have to jump through any hoops, or is it just you send in your application and you got it?
Yeah, it was pretty fast. It was a couple weeks because Bobby was quite busy with the edits. Like Bobby Kerner, who does the editing on the comics, he was getting ready for a bunch of deadlines, I guess. Sorry, my brain. He was busy, so he's like, just give me a while. And it was only like a week, maybe 2 weeks, and I heard back from him, and he had a script that he wrote himself, and he's like, would you want to illustrate this one that I wrote for the Applejack Micro? Which I was glad to work directly with the editor right away, like on his story. I was like, oh, what an honor. Very good. I guess I did all right.
Oh, was this must have been after that comic we talked about before, the Kay Living With It comic?
Oh, it was after. Yeah,
we got to get to that, because
yeah.
we definitely have to talk about that. So when I first met Brenda, she well, not first, but one of the times we were hanging out at one of these conventions, she was telling me about this comic she did, and I'll let you tell the story, but it sent some of the copies, and it was the real hoot.
Yeah, it was my first paid comic job, and the first issue I did when I was 19, so it's a little rough. But it was called Kay Living With It, and it was a comic produced by Bayer Pharmaceutical, which,
I don't know if I remember you telling me it was Bayer Pharmaceutical.
Oh yeah, no, it was for them. It was for kids with hemophilia. So if you were a kid and you had this disease, you could send in and get copies of this comic, which featured a kid, the main character, with hemophilia, which sounds like a great idea, but the stories were so random, man.
Really?
They were so random. Like you read some of them. There was like, he always had some comparison of his life to some fantasy or some strange parallel. So, and sometimes they'd be, I don't know, like he was watching a movie in one about a prisoner. And he's like, I feel like a prisoner because my parents, are always keeping me under lock and key and won't let me do anything because of my disease and all this. But yeah, there was always stories like this. And yeah, I mean, some of it was fun, but some of it was silly. I never knew what happened with those comics, though. And
you think Kay got it? You think Kay got a definitive ending, like a
no,
no,
he didn't.
Not a satisfying conclusion,
No, I got up to issue 8 with them, and the writer had changed at that point, so I worked with a new writer for one issue, and then the next one, I just didn't want to anymore. I'm like, I'm done with this comic. I'm not really into it anymore. And they got another Canadian artist to draw it, Jeff Isherwood. I don't remember how to pronounce his name. He got the job after when I stepped down, and he was very confused by it too. He's like, is there going to be more? What's going on? But it was so...
He did work for Alpha Flight, didn't he? Like, didn't he do some Marvel work at Isherwood?
I think so.
Yeah, cool.
He's been in the comics game for a while, so... But yeah, it was really funny. His son was actually a Brony. I met his son one day. They were on the island, so they're like, you wouldn't mind meeting my son? He's a big Brony. So it's like, cool, let's do it. So we just had like a hangout.
Well, that's something interesting. I guess we could jump into as well, because that's something that sort of always, I don't want to say confused me, but it's just something I've never really understand was the Brony culture. And I imagine you're deep into it. I mean, for our listeners who may not know, bronies are like adult males that really enjoy My Little Pony, not in just as a show, like not in any weird other way. They just like the show. They like the culture. They have conventions. They buy the toys. They wear the shirts. And to sort of define it as a fandom, it's sort of one of the seemingly odder ones, but at its heart, it just seems really wholesome in a way that it was almost like the redefining masculinity by guys that just want to sort of read a nice story or a pleasant thing you don't have to get too deep into. But it seems to have really focused onto the My Little Pony community specifically.
Yeah, I think it just people just were like, they'd watch it ironically in the beginning and just to make fun of it because they're like, oh, what's this? But they found themselves really enjoying it because the quality of the show is so good and the writing is so good and the characters are just so lovable that they couldn't help but be taken in. So yeah, they just liked it. Some people said it helped them with their depression. They were in a really bad spot. So just having a show focus so much on positivity really helped them to kind of come out of that, and it connected them to a community where they made some really good friends. So yeah, it helped people through some tough times, and you know, it really resonates as well with people on the autism spectrum. And yeah, so they feel very, you know, because it's like everybody's included, everybody's valid sort of thing. So like a lot of different communities. But yeah, I've noticed a lot in the Bronies that there's a lot of people on the autism spectrum that really connect to the characters and they feel like, oh, that's me. And yeah, and I thought that's really sweet.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah,
Is there a specific, like, I know the multiple ponies have various, like, personalities, of course, like, but they also represent different things, I think. Do they not in a way? Is there one that specifically reached out to the autism spectrum, or is it just that the like, is there an autistic pony, or is it just the scope of the show itself that sort of attaches?
I think it's the scope of the show itself.
Okay.
There's just something about it that really resonates with them, just makes them feel good. So yeah. I wish I could describe it better. I'm sure I can. As soon as the interview's over, I'm like, oh, I had this. I could have said this, but
no, I think you're describing it very well. It's like I know I watched a documentary on it one time. I think it was on Netflix. It was about Bronies, and I think the way they seemed to frame it was like this seedy documentary about these weirdos that are into this thing. But you watch it, and it's just like a lot of normal guys, like mechanics and you know, carpenters and like manly seeming men that are just in the show with like pony tattoos, and they go to these conventions, and it's like this community they found with each other, kind of circling around I guess a seemingly childish show. But in the end, you're right, it seems like they're drawn to the positivity of it, which is something in the modern world we're not getting a lot of. So
yeah, I know they do a lot of charity work, and they'll do a lot of auctions to raise money for anti-bullying or whatever that specific con wants to raise money for, and people are so into it. It's I auctioned off some stuff at one of the last ones I was at, and like I was going to get a new banner, so I was going to auction off my old banner, which had a giant Pinkie Pie on it, and so I was trying to be the auctioneer, and I wasn't very good at it. But I mean, everybody was like super into it, and they were like ready to spend all this money for the good cause. And yeah, it was an anti-bullying charity, and so afterwards everybody was giving their thanks, and the representatives of that charity were there, and they had a little girl with them, and she looks at me and she just like gives me a big hug, and the mom's tearing up and all this. I'm like, I feel like I didn't do anything to deserve this. I did some bad auctioning. Like do I see 300? What's the next one? 320?
You need the gavel. The key is the gavel.
Yeah, I didn't have that. I just had a microphone and a little bit of like semi like dancing around, shifting around strangely.
So you do a lot of these conventions, the My Little Pony and the Brony specific conventions, or?
Yeah, I've done a handful of them. So all the other My Little Pony comic people are all in the States, so it was a little bit, I don't know, I'm a little bit more remote than everybody else. So I've not done as many as some of them, but I've done at least, you know, half a dozen or so. And my first one was interesting. The first one I got invited to was in Germany. So my first BronyCon and my first time in Germany. So it was really funny because I went with my husband, Troy, to that one. And because he wanted to go to Germany, of course. Of course. And we lucked out that the convention offered a +1. So Troy came along and he was very happy to do so. But I still can't forget the time we were going through customs there in Germany, and the agent talks to Troy first. He's like, why are you coming to Germany? And Troy just smiles brightly. He's like, to go to a My Little Pony convention. And the guy was like, and started laughing. It was so funny. And then when I walked up and I'm like, I'm with him and I'm doing the same thing, then he's like, okay, I think he was like, okay, this makes more sense. But I will never forget how he kind of laughed.
That's funny.
Of course, Troy's all in. He's like, "Oh, I see a big Macintosh. I'm gonna get a photo with him." He's good at playing along with this. So.
That's fantastic. It's nice to be supportive.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Very cool. What are the German My Little Pony fans like?
I'd say bronies are pretty much the same, no matter where you go. But yeah, I'd say, I mean, the main thing is they're a bit more reserved, I suppose. Like some people, like at the American ones, they'd be in the hallways singing the songs and stuff together in groups, and that didn't really happen so much in Germany. They were a bit, quieter about that side of it. But they had a big rave at one point. That's when they cut loose.
Yeah, the German rave. That sounds
yeah.
Did you attend, or is that like an after hours thing?
I went for a bit because it was after hours, but unfortunately the building was not air conditioned and it was very hot, and it was a bunch of men jumping around and thrashing about, and it did not smell very good in there.
Wow. I'm always one for like those sort of experiences. Like, when in your life you're going to get to go to like a German brony rave? Like, that just seems like something you can't pass up.
Yeah, I definitely had to check it out. Yeah, definitely had to check it out.
So the My Little Pony fan base, I mean, you do a lot of these conventions. We know about the bronies and stuff, but would you say it's predominantly little girls, or is it like a hard mix between the both?
In Germany, there was not a child to be seen.
Oh.
And yeah, it was mostly men. But yeah,
you think some would be like connecting with their own daughters through this, right?
Yeah,
I assume so. But anyway, I guess not. Not in Germany.
Yeah, I mean, you'd see women here and there, but definitely it was mainly men that would go to these. So.
But at the general conventions, what do you find? Like at the My Little Pony convention specifically, not the Brony one.
They're the same.
Yeah.
The Brony one in Germany was more adults, but some of them do have more kid-specific themes and stuff, like children's drawings and drawing sessions and like children's activities. So they put an emphasis in their advertising about the family events. So you see more kids there. So I've done some drawing sessions with kids, and some of them are really cute and really talented, and they'll draw some cute little ponies. Or one girl drew like the best wiener dog ever. I took a picture of it. I'm like, you don't mind if I take a picture of your drawing? That's not weird, is it? But it's so cute.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, because My Little Pony is such a massive thing, do you feel like daunted at all being a part of something so huge, like with such a massive fan base?
I don't know. I don't think about it too much. Like I said, when I approached the job, it was because I liked the look of it and I liked the style of the stories. I didn't think too much about the fan base until I was at the conventions, and I was like, oh yeah, this is a big deal, isn't it? So I don't know. I have a weird way of kind of like focusing on one thing and kind of not seeing the whole thing that way. So I just kind of like focused on the job, and then everything else was kind of revealed as time went. So,
Have you run into any overly disturbing fans, or people that have sort of, made you feel uncomfortable, or have been really, really almost? I don't know. I know we've talked a bit about in the past about some of other your interaction with fans, but any memorable experiences that stand out?
I don't know that my weirdest convention experiences happened at PonyCons.
No,
I don't think so. But some of them are just funny. I don't know. I just laugh at them because they're so absurd. Like I had this one guy come to my table at one of the local shows, and he kind of made a funny comment, like looking at my pony art, saying like, bright colors make me feel like I'm going to throw up. So no offense to your art, but it kind of makes me feel like I'm going to throw up. And it made me laugh because I'm like, in what dimension is this a conversation starter? So I was just laughing at it. It just was funny, but.
Why would you even bring it up? Like, why?
Yeah. Yeah. But I think he was going along all the artist tables because my friend Mike Ruth was saying how he was in front of his table and dropped something, and was like, turns to Mike and says, "Oh, lucky you get to watch me bend now." And Mike was like, "What?" So yeah, I think everybody got a little experience with him. So
yeah, I love Mike. He's great. I
great.
find that with people, like most of the people at these conventions, they're fantastic, lovely folks. But you get the occasional person that will like just sort of make you sort of raise an eyebrow and just sort of think
Mhm.
about what kind of world these people live in or what their lives are like.
Mhm.
There's this
Yeah.
one guy, like he would come by and look at my prints every convention, every
Mhm.
single one I go to, he'd be there and he'd come by and he'd be like, oh, and they're like 11 by 17. He'd be like, oh, well, they're a bit big. I don't have much space on my wall. You should do them like smaller. And he would say it every single time, this one guy. So one time I finally, like, it was just,
Mhm.
I did a booklet of some of my prints. And I was like, look, I got a booklet. You can cut them out. They're the size you want. It's perfect. And he just
Mhm.
looked, you know,
Oh, no.
he didn't buy one and he went away. He just walked away. And I thought it was
Oh, no.
hilarious. I was like, you've been hounding me for years to do this. And I've
So
done it.
funny.
Yeah.
So
So
funny.
it was like obviously a non-thing, but I just thought it was so like this guy literally it's the only thing he ever talked to me about for years. And then I finally succumbed and said, here, look, I did it.
Mhm.
And then he didn't buy it.
Oh no. Yeah. I mean, kudos to the guy who said that my artwork is a little bright for him because he
Mm.
saw a copy. I had the issues of Halls of the Turnip King back then, and that's like a more like a duller color palette, and he's like, I like this one, and he did buy it. So like,
Oh, fantastic.
thank you, dude out there. So I do appreciate you.
Oh, fantastic. So
Yeah.
speaking of Hall of the Turnip King,
Mhm.
that's your new indie book that just came out, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you've had single issues out for a while, or is it just a collection that you kickstarted and got going? Or
Yeah, I had the single issues out for a while because the project was taking so long because it kind of kept being put to the side for My Little Pony and anything else that was more immediate to pay the bills. So I was like, the only way I'm going to get this done is to give myself little goalposts. So I paid for the issues out of pocket, and I produced the 4 issues with Kablam Printing, which they're a great company. I really enjoy the quality and the speed of them and the communication. But the goal was always to have it as a collected graphic novel. And so Troy and I had decided that we wanted to, eventually put more emphasis on the creator-owned stuff and not have it take years and years and years. So we developed Pegamoose Press, like a publishing imprint for specifically our indie books. So in October, we launched it with Halls of the Turnip King hardcover collected volume, and it did very well. It got funded and then some, and we got 1,000 books printed up, and we got them all shipped out within 2 months after the Kickstarter was done. So everything was out, I think, by January. We did the Kickstarter October, and everything was out by January. So we were quite happy with them. And we got them printed up at a place called Friesens in Winnipeg, and they did a really good job. So it was printed in Canada too, which we're quite proud of. Yeah.
as you should be.
Yeah.
So what is
And
what is the base of that story?
It's basically about this entitled prince named Tashin who just wants to sit around and plays video games. He has no interest in his duties as royalty, but his dad will have none of it and kicks him out to do this mission in the Dwarven mines to create an alliance between the 2 kingdoms. And it's just a continuous blunder of him trying to navigate this. And yeah, it just it escalates because he just is a horrible person the whole time. So it escalates. But it's like a slapstick comedy, heavily influenced by like Looney Tunes slapstick comedy, and also like the British humor of that terrible guy who just keeps digging his foot in further and further,
The Basil Faulty.
Yeah, definitely. So it's basically a book of watching him fail constantly. So I had a lot of fun making it, and I hope that, and people seem to respond quite well to it too when they got their copies. They liked the quality of the book, and they liked the comedy of it. So I was very happy with that because I'm always nervous. Oh, well, people like this. And
I actually shamelessly haven't got a chance to read it yet because of everything going on. But do you know if Cal has copies in the store? Range Adventures?
I know he did order some. I don't know if he's out yet though.
Okay,
or if
I'll
he
check
still
when I
has
go in.
copies. Yeah.
I'm going in this weekend, so I'll check with him.
Oh, awesome.
But I'm
So
excited
tell
to
him-
read it. It looks fun.
Oh, thank you. Tell Cal I said hi. I miss Strange Adventures.
Yes.
Kick-
It's my first time going in since everything happened. I mean,
Yeah.
there were no
Yeah.
comics being delivered for quite a while, and now that they're kind of coming back, I got to get in and pick them up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How was that affected you in overall? Much or? I know like Marvel and DC
Yeah.
seem to kind of cap things, but with IDW
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a hiccup because I had done an issue of Agretzko that Netflix show with Sanrio, the creators of Hello Kitty. Like they have this Netflix show called Agretzko, and Oni Press has the license to do the comics. And I wrote and I drew issue 3 for that. And it was supposed to come out in April, but got bumped until June. So yeah, a little bit of a hiccup there. And I was going to start another project with Oni, but like an NDA project with them. But it got a little bit bumped. I'm finished writing the script now, so at least it's rolling, but it's been going slow.
So when did you so you're writing scripts for these stories now, but when you started with My Little Pony, you were just doing art?
Yes, yeah.
Do you write it as well now, or was it always just art?
It was always art with My Little Pony.
Okay.
And yeah, I did a pony comic, a 3-issue miniseries last year called Spirit of the Forest. But at that point I was feeling like all I've ever done in comics is ponies, so I'd like to branch out. So when Agretzko came by, of course, my love of Japanese anime, I was just like, please, can I have this? And it was the same editor working with Troy on Rick and Morty versus Dungeons and Dragons. And she kind of offered Troy Agretzko, and I kind of barged it. I'm like, no, me, that project's mine. So yeah, Troy was so busy. He's like, you can have it. Like, there's no, no worries. It's definitely made for you more than me. So
I don't assume that's something that happens to you guys don't go head to head on jobs very often, do you, in that way?
No, not
you
very
do have
much.
a kind of similar-ish drawing style, so I can see why you both would kind of, I mean, you're both very broad, but like with the more cartoony look of like ponies and the Powerpuff Girls, I could see why you both your names would probably fall into categories fairly often for people looking for a specific type of person. So.
Yeah, I think because Ponies was so long lasting of a project, it's kind of unusual for something that's not Marvel and DC to run that long. So I was kind of stuck on Ponies. Like I was always on Ponies, but Troy would jump from title to title, so he got to work with more editors and more different titles. So yeah, so I think that's kind of like Troy does get asked a bit more, and I think that's why, is because I was kind of always the pony girl. And that's kind of another motivation to kind of branch out so people know I can do more stuff. So hopefully in the future, they'll see that I can be diverse and not just one style of ponies. So that was also part of the goal. But yeah, the editor was the one to offer for me to write. I didn't have to ask for that. I was a little terrified because I'd never written for license before. So I was a little worried, but I think it turned out okay.
I'm unfamiliar with that property. What is it? What's the story behind it?
It's called Agretzko, and it's about this little red panda girl that works in an accounting office, and she has to deal with like harassment from her boss, who's like this big angry pig dude, and just like deal with just stress at work, like just a working girl kind of thing. And after hours, when she's done at the office, she goes and screams out death metal at the karaoke bar to relieve stress and like deal with her rage. So it spoke to me.
It sounds cool, actually. I think now that you mentioned, I think I do recall seeing it in the feed on Netflix. But is it a kid show? Like, it's not, is it?
It's on adult Netflix. And it's not bad for kids. There's a bit of cussing, but I think it's just more so the subject matter wouldn't relate to kids because office job.
That's what I was.
Kids
That's
know
what I was
all
thinking.
about that. Yeah,
like
but it's really fun.
The drudgery of working in an office, I don't think it's something kids could totally relate to.
No.
Kind of sounds
really.
like an anime Dilbert with death metal mixed in, which isn't.
Yeah, and just super cute.
Oh, cool.
Sanrio, like the Hello Kitty people, super cute, like that kind of more iconic look. So yeah, really cute. Yeah,
Netflix is bringing sort of the with the adult themed animated stuff into some interesting territories. I've been noticing. Like, I've watched BoJack Horseman and those sort of shows, but which I really, really like. But I see they have a new one now by the guy. Is it the creator of Adventure Time? Has like a more adult. Is it Adventure Time?
I didn't know that.
One of those shows, but anyway, it looks very interesting. It's some kind of a dream based thing, but I can't remember.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, it's been a Midnight Gospel. That's what it's called.
Oh, okay.
It just came to my head. I can't think of the team that does it, but it looks very interesting and definitely like kind of a heady existential sort of life sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm a little bit behind. I'll have to check Netflix.
Yeah, well, that's the one good thing from some of the extra time I've had because of the whole pandemic. I've managed to catch up on some of the shows that I've been woefully behind on.
Yeah.
So, Halls of Turnip King, is that something that's you could do more of, or is it a done in one and you're happy to finish it there?
Well, the story that's told in that book is told all in that volume. But I do have other stories in the universe with the character of Prince Taschen. So I've got like 2 more books in my head. So it just kind of depends on if I feel there's enough demand for it. 'Cause, like I said, I do want to do new ideas and work on new things. So I might come around and do them someday just because I want to. Or I could just see if there's people that are like, oh, I really want to see more stories with these characters and see more silliness with them. So yeah, a couple more books if I could.
Oh, fantastic. I'm
Yeah.
sure you will. I mean, it's kind of a dumb question, but I assume you prefer to work on stuff you write yourself. Is there a preference either way, or?
I mean, both are good. Like the one thing about writing my own stories is it causes me more stress because I'm worried people will judge me. But so if I'm just working on somebody else's story, I can kind of relieve some of that anxiety. But I feel like, you know, the more I write, maybe that will lessen because I'll just kind of get used to it. I'll grow a thicker skin or just some sort of tolerance for exposing myself through my thoughts and ideas and my stories. So yeah, I mean, and it's good to work on my own stories because then I can really control the pacing of the visuals. And I really like that, playing with layouts and playing with the timing of comics. And that's definitely not something I can get when I'm working on someone else's script because we have a 22-page or 20-page set page count. And it's like, yeah, there's no time for play in there. You got to get the story done. So
what is your typical deadline? Like when you get a script, like say for My Little Pony script, how long do you have to get, like you ink as well, or is it just pencils? I
ink as well.
Okay,
and I usually get 4 to 5 weeks. I like 5 weeks better because having kids, you never know what's going to happen in those 4 weeks. And if I didn't have to worry about that, then the 4 weeks would be pretty good. That the first 2 for pencils, the last 2 for inks, and that's in a perfect world, but it's never a perfect world. So I like the 5 weeks better, but I do what I can.
Yeah, the weekly comic, or sorry, the monthly comic sort of world seems like a very fast-paced, kind of cutthroat industry.
Yeah, I don't know how people can, like I've done it, but I don't know how people can do it more often. Because I'm kind of here and I do an arc and then I'm gone. I do an arc and I'm gone.
That's what modern comics seem like. It's like, I remember back in the day, it would seem like, you buy some of these compendiums or volumes of the omnibuses that have like entire runs of stuff, and it's like one guy doing the art like for 100 issues straight to do this whole series. But you don't see that so much anymore. It's more like an arc of 6 issues is one guy, and then the next arc will be another artist, and then so on and so forth. Yeah. So that's the only thing that saved me with monthly comics. So I'd like to move more into OGNs, like the graphic novel stuff, even when collaborating with a writer, if I could, moving forward. The monthlies are fine, and they're good to keep your name out there constantly, but I feel like they drain me pretty fast. I can imagine.
Yeah. It's like you want to keep enjoying making comics, but if you feel a little burnt out, and I feel like maybe my stamina isn't so good as some people, so I feel burnt out faster than others.
Oh well, I mean, I can totally understand that. Like, even just when I was doing my own indie comics, which I'm so far behind on doing something I really want to kind of get back into. Even putting that pressure of a deadline to get to the printer to get to a convention, it wears on you. I remember being up late, like super late nights, like 4 or 5 a.m. just to finish inking pages and stuff because it had to get done. So yeah. And I feel like I'd be doing more of that if it wasn't for Nathan, like my little one, kind of dragging me back to the real world, being like, no, you have to stop and pay attention to me. So yeah, he's the one that kind of keeps me from going that far. So maybe my stamina would be better if I did just have myself and my comics, but yeah, having kids changes things for sure. Unfortunately, life has to be a part of that somehow. Yeah, chain yourself to your desk. Yeah, it's good though. Like, it's probably not healthy to be chained to your desk all the time. So, is there a particular genre or type of book that you haven't done yet that you want to get into? I don't know. I feel like
I definitely lean towards fantasy stuff, but kind of like a mix of like fantasy slice of life stuff. But I don't know. We'll see what comes anyway. I've got little ideas floating around that,
Oh yeah.
yeah, maybe might develop into books someday. We'll see if, yeah, it'd be nice to do one that's a bit more of like a reflection of somebody's life, because I tend to do more like just kind of action and adventure, and the story kind of pumps you forward. But yeah, something that's a bit more quiet and subtle, I suppose, with its themes would be a nice thing to do sometime.
Oh, sounds interesting. I like those sort of slices of life
Mm-hmm.
stories, like the Harvey P. Kerr stuff, or anything like that kind of biopic comic sort of thing. You ever thought about doing something along those lines, like the Brenda Little story?
I don't know if I could tell my story. I feel like I've got too many siblings. They'd be like, why would you write me like that? So, yeah.
I've had this conversation with Ed, actually, Ed Brisson. He was one of my earlier interviews. And it was about that. Like, do you feel like there's sort of pressure from your family in some way that you're afraid to broach anything like that? Like, if you misrepresent them in their eyes, that's going to be backlash to you and something you don't want to deal with?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I see Craig Thompson with blankets, and I'm like, how could you do that, man? You're crazy. And he had a lot of tension with him and his parents after that came out as well.
I can see why.
Yep. So he's got a new one out called Ginseng Roots, and he's kind of telling a different side of his childhood. And, you know, he kind of addresses some of that blankets drama and how things have they've begrudgingly accepted this book over the years and stuff. So it's kind of interesting to see a little bit of that side of things too.
Wow, that's super interesting. He would be a cool guy to talk to. Have you known him for a long time? Or?
I've known his work, but I've never met him personally.
Cool.
So,
yeah,
I mean, Blankets is kind of one of those first indie comics you find, because it took a while before I realized indie comics were a thing. I thought North American comics are just Marvel and DC, and I'm not really into those comics. But then you find out about like Blankets because it's at the library, and you're like, oh wow, no, we make more books than that. So yeah, so you see those books, and I kind of gravitated towards those once I kind of was growing a little bit out of the manga phase. Then so that's definitely where I stayed, was the indie stuff and creator owned.
Yeah, I remember the first time I came across that too. It's funny that whenever I talk to people that aren't really comic fans, they're like, comics are interesting, but I'm just not into superheroes or whatever. I'm always like, there's so much more, so much more. There's volumes and mountains of everything. Anything you're into, you can find it in a comic book. It doesn't have to be a superhero battle. I love those too, but there's so many great indie books out there with so much unique ideas and concepts that can kind of reach to everybody.
Yeah. Because I've got friends still that will say to me, they're like, I just don't really read comics, and it just seems weird. It's like, do you just not read? Like, I just couldn't. I mean, some people don't read novels, I suppose, but it's kind of like saying I just don't watch TV ever. Like, TV is just one thing, or movies are just one thing. Books are just one thing. It's kind of that same. It's like, how come people tend to think comics are all one thing? And I suppose I was guilty of that when I was young, thinking Marvel and DC. But yeah, it's just, I try to tell them, well, there's more to it than that. It's a genre. Like, it's not a genre, it's a medium. And they're like, okay, but I still don't really read comics. I'm like, oh, I wish I could show you good comics. Maybe you'd like them then, or be more open to it if you knew. But you're just not listening right now. You have to see it.
Yeah, and I take a kind of a perverse pleasure in reminding people about movies that were comics, like that they didn't know were comics, like Cronenberg's A History of Violence, or the Tom Hanks movie Road to Perdition, the gangster movie. Like, those are all comics originally. Most people don't know that sort of stuff. And even shows like Umbrella Academy and stuff on Netflix. And I mean, I know there's a superhero element to that, but that sort of stuff is such a way more nuanced kind of representation of superhero stuff than comics. But even outside of superheroes, just with neat ideas like Chew or Scalped, or like any of those sort of fun books. I'm trying to think of the one that Jeff Lemire did. I can't think of right now.
He's done so many.
So many good ones. Sweet Tooth.
Right. Yeah.
And so many that lend themselves to like amazing TV shows, like Why the Last Man is getting an adaptation. I know Lock and Key is on Netflix.
Yeah, Lock and Key was great. I'm usually not a horror fan, and I really enjoyed that series.
The book, or the
books,
show?
yeah.
Have you watched the show?
No, I haven't. I was curious until everybody kept saying it wasn't great, and I'm like, oh, but. And I'm bad at watching TV anyway, so.
It's fine. I'm a huge fan of the graphic novel, but I did not like the show very much at all. And it was filmed partially in Nova Scotia.
Yeah, I heard they make Nova Scotia look lovely.
They do. I think they filmed at Lunenburg, which is a really lovely area. Very nice coastal town. But yeah, no, the show it seems like Riverdale, or one of those sort of like teen sort of but like a neutered teen sort of show, and not so much as dark or broody as with the themes. And one thing that always annoys me about that sort of stuff, and I know this is just me venting at this point, is like in the comic, the mom is like a normal kind of looking mom, the dad's a normal looking dad, the kids are normal kids, the teachers are all kind of normal, but when they make a TV show, everybody is just gorgeous. Like the dad looks like he's like a model, the mom's a model, like the neighbor's a model, everybody's a model. It's just like it takes me right out of it, because that's not life. Like, I know it's about magical keys and all that sort of stuff, so obviously it's not grounded in reality, but just like I just would like to see more real people,
Yeah, so many adaptations to the screen suffer that, unfortunately. So yeah, I guess that's the way it is. But yeah, something like Lock and Key, you kind of want it to be a bit grittier. So if everybody looks like they've been to the salon for hours, you're like, huh.
And just because a comic or a book, like the source material, focuses on a teenager, doesn't mean it needs to be a teen show. And that's the other thing, right? Like, just because there's some teenagers in the show, and that it sort of centers around, or in the book that centers around, it seems like the studios naturally assume it has to become a teen show, and we have to throw in like teen drama and teen like stuff that's not really in the book,
Yeah, as long as they're not dabbing.
Yeah, they may have been. I rarely give up on a show. Like, if I start watching, I'll usually make it to the end of the season, and usually I'll try to push on, but that's one I could not. I had to tap out. Yeah, it is not good. But power to people that like it. It's just not for me, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So what's next for so you're Brenda Little, right? You've taken Troy's name when you got married?
Yeah, but for my comics, I still stick with Brenda Hickey. So yeah, just to kind of keep the two separate a little bit. So but what's next for me? That book I'm working on with Oni that I can't quite talk about yet. But Troy and I actually just launched our Kickstarter for our next Pegamoose Press book, which is Troy's book this time, and Goranauk and the Golden MacGuffin. So yeah, July 1st we launched that. So
fantastic. Definitely, anybody listening, get out there and check that out. I have some of his other Angora napkin books, and they're a lot of fun.
Yeah, because he's had 2 books already, so this is the 3rd book of the series, and they've also got a cartoon pilot on YouTube you can watch for free. So Angora Napkin's been around. This is kind of their last hurrah, and it's a really fun book. It's a self-contained story, so if you read the other Angora Napkin books, then you're good, but if you haven't, you're good. So yeah, it's a really fun book, because it was written like to be a web comic. So each comic is like a strip, like a one strip gag. So the book's really punchy that way, because it's got so much like little gags happening all the time in each strip. So yeah, it really worked well this time with those characters to have really punchy, good little one-liners and stuff every page. So
do you have much, like, this is his project that's getting put out? Did you have much input in the creative process of it, or is that's his thing and the Turnip King is like your thing?
Yeah, it's basically just independently created, but then we're teaming up together to combine our powers to publish it, like to raise money to publish it. So this is all Troy's work, and yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and cool. Turnip King was all mine. So yeah, we've got a couple other projects in the works too for Pegamoose Press, so that we're hoping to kickstart. I think the next one we'll be doing in February next year is kind of the goal. I mean, you never know what'll happen, but that's kind of our ballpark thing. So we'll kind of keep rolling with that, kind of my project, Troy's project. The next one's a collaboration, so we're both working on the next one, and then I'll have another book, and then Troy will have another book. So we'll kind of just keep rotating through that cycle, and should be, hopefully we can keep it going that way if we kind of lean on each other for that, to keep the Pegamoose Press out there.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I certainly look forward to hearing it, or to reading it, and to any of the future things that you're doing. And I just want to thank you a lot for coming on the show. I hope you had as much fun as I did.
Oh yeah, I had a great time. Thanks so much for asking me, André. It's always good to chat with you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. And there you have it, my interview with Brenda Hickey. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, and you may be able to tell in the interview, but Brenda and I know each other. Her and her husband Troy are friends of mine. I met them on the convention circuit, and we always usually go to dinner, to trade stories and just have a few laughs after an arduous day on a convention floor. And after the interview was over, Brenda and I were talking about meeting up probably when I go to PEI. Around the end of the month, just to see her and Troy while I'm in the area, which is always a delight. Very excited to do that. Also, you heard her mention that her husband Troy's, the Halls of Turner King are out there now, but her husband Troy's Kickstarter for Angora Napkin, the Golden MacGuffin, is out there. It is out there right now. I have backed it, and there is a special I can't think of it, tier that you can sponsor to get his new book and the Hall of the Turner King book as well, both in one sitting. And if you go one tier higher than that, you'll get them autographed and with a personal sketch inside just for you, which happens to be the tier I backed. I'm very excited to see what I get when it comes in. So, Brenda's a great person. I had a great interview with her. It was a lot of fun. I'm really glad I had a chance to get her on there. And I've actually had a few creators reach out to me saying how they would like to be in the show. And if you happen to be a creator of comics or something related to the comic world, you work in a comic store, you're in the industry somehow, and you think it'd be fun to be on the show, I would love to have you reach out through the website, graphichistories.com, or Instagram is the other way you can get in touch with us, or Facebook. The email address is on the website, and you can jump in there. So, if you know anybody that would be interested, if you're connected to someone in the comic industry you think would be a good candidate for a future episode, an interview episode, then by all means, please reach out, tell them to get in touch with me, and I will happily interview them. Okay, so for our next edition, next week on the Graphic Histories podcast, we will be stepping back into the Marvel Universe, where we will be learning about Morbius, the living vampire. He'll be featured in a new movie coming out starring Jared Leto, another one of the Sony Spider-Man kind of side quill projects, Venom being their first one, Morbius being their second one. So you've probably seen the trailer. I'm not sure how great that movie's going to be. My hopes are, Venom was okay, I guess. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it, somewhere in the middle. Morbius reminds me of those sort of early 2000s superhero films that had a lot of flash and not a lot of substance, but I'm hoping I will be surprised. But let's learn about the comic history, the graphic history, if you will, of Michael Morbius, also known as Morbius the Living Vampire. So join us next week and tune in to listen to that. Also, please make sure you hit subscribe in whatever podcast way you're listening to this. We are on Stitcher, we are on CastBox, we are on iTunes, and we are on Spotify. So please make sure to hit that subscribe button and keep tuning in. I'm glad you are. I'm glad you're enjoying my program, and I'm very happy to bring it to you every week. So thank you very much for your support, and I look forward to talking to you next week.